If you're looking for a new take on pancakes, or maybe just a way to honor the king of rock and roll at the breakfast table, I've got the perfect solution for you here. These are my Elvis pancakes, named for his favorite sandwich, peanut butter, banana, and bacon. But if that combination doesn't sound appealing, there are many ways you can change this up. So if you'd like to see how this is done, stick around because it's coming up next. Hello and welcome to my kitchen. My name is Roy. I'm a home cook and amateur baker, and I'm here on this channel sharing recipes that have helped me to lose over 125 pounds, whether those recipes are mine or someone else's. Now today is one of mine, but I'm stealing the basis of this, as you probably noticed from the thumbnail, from the king of rock, Elvis. If you know anything about Elvis, he was known to have a certain affinity for a sandwich of peanut butter and banana, and usually bacon as well. Now, I had been playing around with this bacon pancake recipe, and I did do a version that was tropical, that had some coconut and some pecans in it, and that is an option. It was also double the size of this one. So this one is kind of an experiment to make sure that this proportion works, and if not, I will adjust things as we go along. You know me, the written recipe will have all of the correct details in there, but we will find out soon. Let's go over the ingredients. I have here some cooking spray. That's optional. You can use it. I am not going to use it, although I may give my griddle a little spritz of it if I think it's needed, but I'm actually going to be using the bacon grease. The bacon grease is apparently included in their calories. So I assume, and I have heard, that it is also included in the WW points, and I would assume they're included in the healthy bites as well. So that is what I'm going to be using, and I'm going to count it just as part of the bacon, not as anything separate. Speaking of which, I have here 3 strips of center cut bacon, and center cut is the leanest cut of bacon, so if you can find it, it's definitely worth it. It allows you to have the bacon without feeling too guilty about how many bites, points, or calories you might be using up. Here I have some mashed banana. I did 2 medium bananas. They are about 5 ounces each with the peel on, 5 to 6. It came out to about 3/4 cup. I'm not entirely sure that's going to be enough, but that is what I'm basing it on, half of what I did previously. We will see as we move along. But you also want to make sure that those are very ripe so that they're giving off some of their sweetness. If they're too green, that sweetness hasn't come out yet. So you do want to make sure there are some brown spots on the banana. Make sure they're soft enough to mash up and get that sweetness in here. Here I have 1/3 cup of almond milk. That is at room temperature. It will come together a little more easily with that at room temperature, but you could probably get away with not doing it at room temperature because it is a small amount. Here I have 1 egg, and again, that is at room temperature. In the original recipe, I did use just 1 egg. I'm not sure if I'm going to have too much or not, but I reduced the almond milk that I had in the original, so I'm hoping there will be a balance there. But as I said, this is a test, so we will see how that comes out. I may make changes, I may not. Here I have 1/3 cup of flour. That is just plain all-purpose flour. If you use self-rising, you can get rid of the baking powder and salt that I will be using, because that is included in self-rising, or self-raising if you're in the UK, flour. Here I have 1/4 cup of powdered peanut butter, and I'm using PB Fit, but any powdered peanut butter you like is fine. I use PB2 sometimes as well. Now, if you for some reason don't want the peanut butter, that's fine. You can replace it with either the same amount of flour or some protein powder, flavored protein powder, if you want to go a different flavor route. Perhaps some chocolate protein powder would be great. So You can play around with this. None of this is gospel. You can do as you want, and it will say so in the recipe. Here I have 1/4 cup of sugar replacement. I'm using all-purpose in the raw. That is my preferred one, but whatever one you're using is fine. Here I have 1 teaspoon of baking powder, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Now you could, if you wanted to make this a little more tropical, replace the vanilla extract with coconut extract. That would be fine. As I said, play around with it. If you don't want the bacon, use some chocolate chip, use some diced strawberries. Change this up however you want to change it up. I just decided I was going to do the Elvis, and that's what I'm going with. But those are all of the ingredients. Let me shuffle a few things around and we'll get started. All right, so the first thing I want to start off with is the bacon. Again, if you're not using the bacon, you obviously don't have to start with this part, but I'm going to cut it up into small bits. If you were to cut them just once across here, you'd have a long strip that is called a lardone. We're going to be doing half of that. So what I'm going to do is cut through the center lengthwise and get this cut in half. And now I'm going to do what would be a lardone, except we've cut them in half, and I'm just going to cut them across the width about a 1/2 inch wide. And my bacon has been sitting out a little bit as I was preparing everything, so it is a little softer than typical. So if you get any pieces that are still kind of stuck together, you can just cut through that, but you just want to get them into little pieces that we can cook up. Now, whenever you cook bacon, you want to start it off in a cold pan, because if you put it into a pan that's already hot, it's instantly going to contract and not give you a nice, crisp, even piece. That might be where a lot of people get those wavy pieces, because it's seized up. Then you have to get it to make contact with the surface as well as you can. But starting it off in a cold pan, you don't have that problem. So I'm just going to take the bacon, scrape it into the pan, and I use the back of the knife because I don't want to damage the blade by scraping it this way. So I always use the back of my knife. Then I'm going to turn this on over medium heat and spread this bacon out as much as I can. And now it's just the process of cooking this down. That would take maybe about 5 or 6 minutes. So let me get this cooked and I'll be back. It's been about 5 minutes and that looks perfect, nice and crispy. Now, I do want to take this out onto a paper towel lined plate, but I don't want to get rid of the grease. As I said, I'm going to use it. So I'm going to tilt the pan back a little bit and just move the bacon up to the opposite end and then carefully slide that out of there without getting too much of the grease out of the pan. And then I still have some grease left in there, and that's what I'm going to use to do my pancakes. And now this I'm going to set aside, and I'm going to bring in a small bowl so that I can add all of my dry ingredients together in there, except for the sugar replacement. A lot of times sugar or sugar replacement is considered a wet ingredient because it will incorporate into all of the wetness and spread throughout a little more easily. So the dry ingredients are just the flour, powdered peanut butter, baking powder, and salt. And I'm going to whisk this all together into one homogeneous mixture. And with the powdered peanut butter, it's kind of easy to tell because it'll all become one uniform color. And that looks good right there. So I'm going to set that aside. And now I'm going to bring in a slightly larger bowl and add in our banana, almond milk, sugar replacement, egg, and vanilla. And break up that egg a little bit, then whisk everything together. You want everything coming together so you don't have pockets of anything in particular, like any lumps of egg or anything like that. Okay, now I'm going to switch over to my spatula here, and I'm going to add in the dry ingredients and just stir that through, and I'm hoping I don't have too much liquid in here, but we will see. As I said, this is an experiment based on a recipe I had made because this is looking a little runny. I think what I should have done is left out the almond milk. until I saw how much liquid I would need for this. But that's not what I did, so I'm going to have to adjust by adding a bit more flour. Okay, I added in another 1/3 cup of flour, so I'm going to stir that through. Okay, it looks like it may be thick enough, but what I'm going to do now is let this sit for about 10 minutes to hydrate the flour. It will also, if there's any gluten that build up from me mixing it together, that will relax and it'll give us a more tender and fluffier pancake. So it's always a good idea to let your batter sit for about 10 minutes and then cook them. So while I'm waiting for that, I'm gonna bring in my griddle and get that heated to 350 degrees. You could do this in a large nonstick skillet, and you would just have to make them in half batches, make 3 pancakes and then another 3 rather than crowding them all in there. And you would use half the bacon grease for each of those rounds, if that's what you're doing. But I'm using a griddle where I can make all 6 at once. So let me get that started, let that set, and I'll be back. All right, it's been about 10 minutes. I have let this sit and it has thickened up a bit, which is exactly what I want. But after inputting that increase in flour into the recipe builder, I've decided to change what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave the flour as it is, bump up the powdered peanut butter to 1/3 cup, and reduce the almond milk to about 2 tablespoons. Once you mix everything together, then add a little bit of almond milk if you need to. But this will all be in the recipe. So now I have my griddle heated up. I'm going to take my bacon grease and add that to the griddle. Like I said, you could use some cooking spray if you wanted, or if you didn't have enough bacon grease to spread over the pan, then you may want to add a little cooking spray, but this looks like it'll be plenty. So I'm going to just take a paper towel and run that all over the griddle so that it spreads out. And again, if you're doing this in a skillet, you'll want to do this in batches. I'm going to take my pancake batter and I'm going to do about 1/4 cup each for a pancake, and hopefully that comes out to 6. If there's any left over, then I will spread that out amongst the 6 that I get here. Okay, and there is a little bit extra, so I'm just going to portion that out amongst the 6 that I have on here, because there's really not enough to make another pancake. And now I'm going to take my crispy bacon. We're going to sprinkle on about a teaspoon per pancake and get that onto each one as they are cooking. This allows you to make sure that each one is getting the same amount and you're not mixing it into the batter and then getting bigger clumps of bacon with some pancakes and not others. So about a teaspoon on each one. And then any leftover, I will divide amongst them all. And you want to cook these for about 3 minutes on this first side. You'll start to see it getting dry and a little bit bubbly on the edges. And I see it's starting there now. So we're going to just give this 3 minutes, check to make sure that it's browning nicely on that side, and then flip them. Slide under there a little bit and look, and that looks good right there. So I'm going to sidle under there and flip, and then it's going to be about another 2 minutes or so on this side until that side has browned. Okay, it's been about 2 minutes and you can see that they're rising up nicely, getting nice and fluffy. Check the bottom side. And that looks good. So I am going to transfer them. If I were just serving this right now, I'd transfer them to a plate. But because I am not serving them right away, I'm going to transfer them to a cooling rack over a sheet pan just to let them not get soggy on the bottom. But I'm going to get rid of my griddle for now. And there we have my Elvis pancakes. Again, you don't have to make them exactly like this. You can play around with different flavors, add some sugar-free chocolate chips, what have you. But I wanted to give these a try. So I'm gonna let you know right here what we thought of them. And I'm hoping for the best. As I said, we enjoyed the other ones. Trying to cut the recipe down in half did prove to be a slight challenge, but nothing that I couldn't play around with and figure out another way of doing it. Now these do freeze really well. You can reheat them either frozen or thawed. I do it in the toaster oven. Takes a little longer, obviously, if they're frozen, but if you thaw them in the fridge overnight and then put them in the toaster oven in the morning, they're perfect. Now, as I said, I am making changes to what I did here, and that will be in the recipe. I am increasing the powdered peanut butter instead of the flour and reducing the almond milk. So I think that should be the perfect balance, but I will have tested it before I shared the recipe, so don't worry about it not working. Now, the way I plan on making them now, these obviously that make 6 pancakes, and you can do any combination. You can have 1 pancake, you can have 2, you can have 3, and each one is going to be a true 2 Better Balanced Bites or Old Blue Points. I'm on the Healthy Better Balance plan, which is equivalent to the old WW Blue plan, and that's around where their current plan is. But if you are following calories, the calories for each of these pancakes is going to be 123. And if you are following macros, the fat is 3.6 grams. Saturated fat is 1 gram. Protein is 7.9 grams. Carbs are 23.8 grams. Fiber is 2 grams. And sugars are 4.5 grams for one of these pancakes. Now this is, as I said, a true 2-bite, 2-point pancake. And that just means that for each one, it's going to be 2. It's not going to do that weird WW math where suddenly it jumps up an extra point. And that is for the way I'm going to write up the recipe, not for the way I did it here. But I hope you enjoyed coming along as I tested this recipe. And if you did, I'd appreciate the usual. Like, subscribe, comment, share. Hit that notification bell for the next time I upload any sort of video, such as tomorrow, if you're watching this the day it comes out. Tomorrow, Saturday at 2 p.m., I am going to be going live, and I'm going to be sharing my weigh-in and a topic that I haven't quite determined yet, but that will be coming up tomorrow at 2 p.m., so hopefully you can join us live. If not, if you watch the replay, just wait another day because the chat along the side of the box doesn't show up for a day or so on the lives. I don't know why, but that way you can follow along with what the chat is saying and what I'm responding to. So just give it a little bit if you don't see the chat bar on the side of the video. Now the corrected recipe for these will be on my blog. I will link directly to the recipe down below, as well as to the blog itself if you're looking for any of my recipes. Or if you want to have a collection of my recipes, you can always pick up my cookbook. That is linked down below as well. But if you're in another country than the US, you can just search recipes with Roy Cookbook because that link is to the US version of the store. Also down there are links to my 2 stores, my Fourth Wall store where you can get this specific apron, or my Zazzle store where there are other aprons. There are also planners and cups and things on both sites. So check out those sites. And if you can help support the channel by picking up a little item, I'd really appreciate it. Also down there is my Amazon storefront. If you're looking for anything that I've used, it may be there. And my social media is down there as well, my Instagram and a few Facebook groups that I'm part of. So check out that description box for all sorts of information. And now I think it's time to give these a try, and I hope you'll be doing the same yourself very soon, no matter how you decide to make them. So until next time, bye.